All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Amy and Nick here. We're doing 2022 preview and prediction for the UCLA Bruins. Look at this coaching staff. Chip Kelly, he's back for his fifth year, 18-25 this far during his tenure in Los Angeles. He's also the play caller. Billy McGovern takes over as defensive coordinator. He was with the Bears, Chicago Bears, it is last year. Plenty of NFL experience and in a variety of college stops. He's been coaching since 1985, so pretty solid addition here. The Bruins, the biggest storyline, they fired the defensive coordinator, Jerry Azianaro. They also lose 9 starters on that unit, so the defense is a big focal point of this football team for 2022. But look at this offense. They finally had a spark last year, Nick. They finally got to go in. DTR thought this was his best season yet after, I believe, his 4th year as a starter. Very great balance as a football team that allowed this football team to have its stride. DTR, 2,900 yards total, 21 touchdowns, 6 picks. That's a pretty solid ratio. He also got his legs involved in a positive way for once last year, 600-plus on the ground, 9 touchdowns. Overall, what were your thoughts on DTR's performance last year, as it really allowed the offense to thrive when he was used properly?
I actually really like DTR as a quarterback. I think he's a solid guy, coming to his 5th year now. I ranked him 3rd in my recent rankings of Pac-12 quarterbacks. I think he's super talented because I love the dual threat ability. Over 3,000 yards total last year, 21 touchdowns in passing and 6 interceptions only, plus another 9 touchdowns on the ground for 30 on the season. I love his ability. He's a super talented guy. He's got that mobility like we hit on, over 600 yards on the ground last year, 4.7 yards per carry. Plus his passing is pretty solid as well, 62.2% completion percentage, 8.5 yards through the air. I like DTR a lot. I think he's a solid quarterback. I think he hasn't hit his ceiling yet either. I think he has still potential to grow a little bit more in this offense. They're going to cater the offense around. It's going to be designed for him. And I think it's really exciting to see what he can do this year.
Now, the whole offense stayed hot last year. A short 2020. They proved it wasn't a fluke because the offense was pretty good that year as well. They only played a handful of games. The running game, though, it included DTR this year, like we mentioned, but Zach Charbonnet, Michigan transfer, he was massive for them. 1,137 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6'1", 220. This guy runs hard, breaks tackles, very elusive. Good vision. He can also block. Impressive breakaway speed. This is one of the nation's more underrated backs, one of the top in the conference that is not getting enough love. Britton Brown, him and Charbonnet made up a pretty solid duo. Brown's now gone. Who can replace him? It's likely going to be Keegan Jones, who's 5'9", 175, and Sean Morrell. Those are the 2 leading candidates. But what are your thoughts on Charbonnet?
Charbonnet is a very underrated running back. I think the fit, him coming over to UCLA, was a perfect fit for him. I really like how he fits in the scheme. 1,100 yards on the ground last year, 5.6 yards per carry, plus 13 touchdowns. Also can play receiver sometimes as well. Almost 200 yards receiving, 8.2 yards per catch for him. I love his ability. I love his size. He just runs over defenders if necessary. Runs over a weak linebacker if he can get involved with that. I love Charbonnet a lot. I think he's a super talented guy. I'm definitely one of the underrated backs. Very underrated playing in the Pac-12.
The biggest concern for this offense is they lose 3 starters on a quite good O-line from last year. Raekwon O'Neal comes over from Rutgers. He should slot in at left tackle. 3 seniors on the interior O-line, so they aren't exactly, scrapped for experience. But tackle is definitely a concern. I doubt how O'Neal's coming over, but there's a lot of departures due to transfer or eligibility or even health. Very problematic. Their new offensive line coach is also Tim Drevno, who was fired at USC. And if you followed the crosstown rival, their offensive line was pretty poor during Clay Helton's entire tenure with Drevno coaching up that unit. So they got a little bit of experience that's obviously helpful, but I definitely have issues with this tackle group, and I think they're definitely going to regress this fall.
I agree. This offensive line is looking poor across the board. I think the right guard and right tackle, Carlin and Gaines, those 2 guys really could use some improvement this season. Both of them did not look great at times last year. I do like how a lot of these guys returning have experience, but I just think the numbers they put together just isn't great. They lost 3 starters from last season. I think they're just going to regress naturally this year.
Another big concern for the offense is they lose their top 3 pass catchers. They do add Jake Bobo, comes over from Duke, plenty of experience under his belt. He's obviously going to be one of their leading pass catchers. Casimir Allen, he converted running back. He's a top returning pass catcher for them, 255 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. Also had a rushing touchdown, a kick return touchdown, 5'9", 175. I expect him to break out in a big way this fall, Nick. Allen and Cam Brown, they both had 17 receptions last year. So a sound starting 3, but depth is a massive concern. I think, it's so bad that 4-star incoming recruit Jaden Marshall, he figures to be leaned on quite big early on in his career as rotational help. And not very thrilled with this receiving group.
Jaden Marshall will have to play early on in that wide receiver X role. He's going to come in quickly if Bobo can't really fit in the West Coast offense. I like Allen a lot, 15 yards per catch last year, 4 touchdowns total. I like Brown as well, 14.5 yards per catch. both in their 17 receptions each. These two guys together are very talented. I kind of like how they slot in. They both kind of complement each other well. Brown playing the X role, Allen in the slot. I think or Brown playing the Z role, Allen in the slot. I think the two of them together are solid. I like how they fit. I just think that, when you replace what they're losing in Phillips at top with 739 receptions last year, it's going to be tough, and naturally you expect some drop off.
Now looking at this defense for UCLA, they only returned 2 starters on a unit, that wasn't exactly great last year. They had 26 sacks. That's a pretty impressive mark, for this football team. Only 3 of those guys are back that recorded a sack last year. Bo Calvert converted 2 defensive end. He had 4 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss, 38 tackles. Carl Jones, he's also converted. Ali Kahoy, he's another veteran. Darius Muasu from Hawaii. This guy's a stat sheet stuffer last year. This is a big-time addition for them. 109 tackles, 14 tackles for loss. He had 5 forced fumbles and 7 sacks. Absolute ridiculous numbers. Right? He even had a pick 6. So he does a lot of everything very well. Great downhill pass rusher. Something they really need for 2022. Shift to a 4-man front here. Not a bad time to do it since they lose so much up front. They added 4 transfers to a D-line that doesn't have much returning experience. So obviously Chip Kelly and this crew identified a big need and they attacked it. Gabriel Murphy from UNT and his brother Grayson. Gabriel, 52 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. He was phenomenal. Grayson was even better, than 14.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. So these 2 brothers coming over from North Texas might just save this defense in the trenches a little bit. How are you feeling?
The portal work was definitely important for this team. They needed a whole lot. Bo Calvert, I think, is a solid guy coming over. 38 tackles last year, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, plus a pass breakup. I think Calvert's a solid guy. I like his leadership as a senior, and picking up the 2 players, both Murphys from North Texas. I like the potential that both of them have. They're both super talented. They kind of work well together. They're siblings. They have that sibling bond there on the field, and I like what they can do out in front. I think they're super talented, and that could definitely help this 24th ranked run defense.
Gary Smith, 6'2", 320 on the interior D-line. Jacob Sykes as well from Harvard, only 277 pounds. But regardless, some much-needed fresh beef. So I'm very optimistic about this D-line. I love the work they did this offseason. Will it be enough, though? We'll see. Like you said, 24th against the run. They did give up 24 touchdowns, though, but still, the 124 yards per game on the ground was the lowest in Kelly's tenure. So they have certainly improved, and I think they can potentially progress even more so this year. It's not the greatest of front sevens, but they added, of course, the linebacker from Hawaii, some guys up front. So I think I'm very excited for that group. I think they can definitely improve or stay right around the same.
I like the potential of this front 7. I think they do have a chance to improve. That run defense is a lot better than I think a lot of people realize it was last year. And I think they can kind of hover around that range of, 20 to 30 in run defense again this year.
Now, the biggest concern is the secondary. They made some slight improvements last year. More so in the back half of the year, struggled immensely early on in the season. The Fresno State game, I don't remember, that was a flat-out embarrassment for the secondary, especially in that fourth quarter. They lose 8 DBs this offseason. That's a big hit to their depth and their overall playmaking. Devin Kirkwood, though, a guy they like to continue to improve. I think he's going to be a strong starting corner for them. Return senior safety Stephen Blaylock, 53 tackles last year. And then a former 4-star, Jalen Davies, comes over from Oregon. Kamari Stewart, Clint Stevens, 2 incoming true freshmen they really like. But overall, they're quite thin in the secondary. Playmaking over the last couple of years, not evident. They're towards the bottom in college football in pass defense. I don't think they're going to get any better. I'm very concerned about this unit because 1 injury, 1 ejection, and these guys are going to be having very inexperienced players, potentially even walk-ons, stepping into the rotation.
I like Baylock a lot. 53 total tackles last year, 3 tackles for loss and a pass breakup. But the depth really isn't there. They worries me a whole lot with this depth. A lot of these guys on this roster, redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomore that have just really no experience with this program. If something happens, like you said, they could be in some serious trouble early on. Kirkwood's another guy that's a good leader. 23 total tackles last year, plus a half tackle for loss and an interception. I'd like to see him maybe step up, maybe increase those numbers a little bit this year.
The schedule preview and prediction. So much turnover on this roster. The O-line is pretty concerning, mainly at tackle. The run game should stay up to par, though. I think DTR, Charbonnet, those guys are going to take care of business on the ground. Pass defense, like we just mentioned, is almost a given to take a step backwards, which is crazy to say because you can't get much worse than they've been the last 2 years. Defense, complete mess. Only 2 guys are back. You fired your DC. So obviously they're starting from square one there. They did, of course, add those guys we mentioned in the front 7, but they can only do so much. The secondary might cause them to rank very poorly against the pass because the pass rush, I don't know if it's going to be able to give them a hand. I think it might give them a little bit of a spark, but I'm not exactly hopeful in seeing that. Luckily for UCLA, they have a very soft non-conference schedule. I think, some games they could potentially win are like Washington and Stanford, but I think the Washington defense will give them fits up front. I think the Stanford passing tackle will have a strong day as well, so I don't see them winning those games. 6-6 for me. I think that's a pretty solid year. But when you see 3 free wins in the month of September, really 4, because Colorado's not going to be very good. It's not really an impressive mark, even if you make the postseason.
Right, this team starts 4-0 here, and I think UCLA fans would be very excited to see that. But then it kind of falls apart. There were 5 straight losses in a row. This is not the toughest schedule in the world. I mean, Bowling Green, Alabama State, South Alabama, these are not powerhouse programs. These are really soft non-conference programs all at home. They should blow out all 3 of those teams with ease. This defense is just going to let them down in tough games here. I think a lot of these Pac-12 offenses will pick apart this poor defense that's very inexperienced.
They'll probably crack the top 25, too, after starting 4-0. You know, the polls go. So, and then I don't think they'll win much after that. So, 6-6 for me. I do think they could potentially win 8 games because the offense, if they can find their stride in the receiving core, and if those guys at tackle can step up, then I think the offense could certainly outscore some opponents, maybe like a Utah or an Oregon, or maybe even a USC. Not likely to, but obviously that's best case scenario, and the potential is certainly there. Defense will be completely horrid. 6-6 for me. Do you see this team making a bowl game?
For me, I don't think a bowl game this year. Maybe they get in at 6-6 or one of those last slots potentially. If they pick up something like that, maybe they get lucky and get thrown into one of those early bowl games at 6-6. That's a possibility. But in general, for me, I just don't see it with this team. I think they're just really poor across the board, and the defense can let them down.
That'd be actually exciting to see this team play maybe in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl against a Mountain West team or something. I think that'd be pretty solid. I'd enjoy watching that. But yeah, I'm not very hopeful for this team this year. Maybe Chip Kelly can work some magic. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's gonna be it for today's episode, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.